Okay, so welcome back everyone. It's immediately after that last episode for me, so I'm still as confused as before. I figured that this would give us the other ending, so this time we're going to not stop him against better judgment. We're going to simply stand by and watch him destroy himself. A cry rose in the pit of his stomach, but what he saw made him swallow it before it could emerge. Ew! Yo! Shiki had sunk his teeth deep into the side of Nano's neck. You know, he bit his own arm for you to suck it from his arm. You just biting his neck like a rabid dog. His face was twisted in a demonic snarl. A shudder rippled through Nano's body. A single rivulet of blood wet his porcelain skin. Shiki's eyes were those of a wild beast, far beyond all sense or reason. The light sent a chill down Akira's spine. Well, no shit. Arbitro's voice was a hoarse whisper. He had gone rigid with horror. The thread of blood widened rapidly. Sorry, but like, when even Arbitro is like rigid with horror, that's, wow. You know your actions are fucked up. The thread of blood widened rapidly, becoming a ribbon that snaked down Nano's throat and dyed his clothing scarlet. Nano's blood was entering Shiki's body, becoming part of him. And he's drinking so much of it too. He was taking reign. A sense of impending doom had nearly spurred Akira to action. That sense was now a certainty. His heart pounded like a hammer in his chest, driving home a single fact. It was too late. Nano's head was tilted toward the sky, and hair clung to the sides of his face. It was difficult to make out his expression. I can see the fucking shit-eating grin plaster there. But when he finally realized what it was, the look he saw on Nano's face hit him like a savage blow to the skull. Nano's lips were stretched in a smile. Not a little smile, but a triumphant grin, the smile of someone who had already won. God damn it. Had Nano known that this would happen? Well, he kinda hoped for it too. Had everything gone just as he planned? Is it? I mean, why are you so surprised? Isn't this exactly what you wanted? For Shiki to kill himself? Oh god. Oh... Shiki reared back with a choked cry. His mouth was stained red, and blood dripped from his chin. As he thrust Nano's body away from him, Nano collapsed to the rain-soaked ground without so much as a whimper. Oh god. A howl tore free of Shiki's throat. He scrabbled at it with his hands as though to rip his own flesh to pieces. The sight stabbed deep into Akira's soul. It felt like the world was falling to pieces. He staggered, hunched over, writhing in agony. Seeing Shiki like this reminded him of Takeru and Keisuke. And that other white-haired guy. Oh my god! So all three endings are just this one choice? Interesting. Okay. Hang on. Oops. Okay, save it. Alright. Saved. Choice! Both choices are really good. Both choices are really good. Takeru and Keisuke. This was different. It's probably, the opening to He Will Not Die. But also I wouldn't be able to watch. I'll be standing there like, okay, I can't take it. I don't think I could watch. So let's just say I couldn't watch. He turned away. He couldn't bear to watch. Nausea surged from the pit of his belly, rising as high as the backs of his eyes. His vision dimmed. Everything was a blur. Oh god. An inhuman scream split the air, driving Akira's terror still higher. He squeezed his eyes shut. He didn't want to see. But in the darkness, sounds and images rose. A black sky, rain like a shower of needles, each drop distinct, a constant thunder in his ears. And through it, the sound of something falling. The sound of hot fluid gushing forth. What? What is happening? Excuse me? What is happening? The dull clang of metal on metal, the sharp swish of rent wind. Shouts. Someone was screaming. No, more than one. Is he killing Arbitro and the others?
バカな。なぜあれを取り込んで生き残れた者など一人も。まさか。
He just happens to be
適合者。
His little eeks. A body struck the ground nearby, blood pooled upon the earth and was washed away by the rain. So he's dead? I think he killed all three of them, right? But even when the blood had faded, a black stain remained on the ground as if in defiance of the storm. Akira could no longer tell what was real. His jaw was clenched so tightly that the grinding of his teeth filled his skull. Through the haze clouding his mind, Akira thought, if there truly were a god, then he must have abandoned them long ago. Yikes! Oh my god! Nano, Akira, no, not just them. Every person in the world was a victim, caught in the turning gears of destiny. They'd never asked for any of this. If that was true, if there was indeed no end to the suffering, perhaps that was why Nano had sought his own destruction. But Akira wasn't broken. Not yet. So the darkness answered, and then... something hit the ground hard, spraying water across his face. He smelled the choking stench of iron. His instincts realized what had happened first. Obeying their insistent command, he forced his eyelids to open. Huh? Okay. The masked man's head was lying there, the head that moments earlier had been attached to a body in a white suit. Yes! Its golden hair formed sudden clumps that drifted in the puddle beneath. He couldn't see its face. So much the better, yeah. If he beheld Abitro's final expression, it would surely stay with him for the rest of his life, yeah. As it was, he couldn't tear his eyes from the wretched thing. Shock had paralyzed him, and his brain was struggling to catch up. He found himself thinking of other matters, as though to escape the reality in front of him. What had happened to Shiki? Turning away from the head, he planted his elbows beneath him and slowly sat up. Not far away, there stood a figure with its back turned to him. Sword in hand, it stood so still as to make all that had gone before seem a bad dream. As Akira surveyed the rest of the scene, he felt a terrible awe take hold. Oh my god, there was no one else left standing. The executioner's hulking forms lay face down, silent. Nearby lay the white-suited corpse whose head had been flown past seconds earlier. Even his downpour was struggling to wash the blood away. Stunned, he looked again at Shiki. There wasn't a single scratch on him. Yeah, of course not. He had overcome his trial, conquered the virus. An unspeakable fear swelled in Akira's stomach. Something was very wrong here! Yeah! Slowly, Shiki turned to face him. Red eyes pierced his soul. And he's looking away like, I can't see. Okay, watch this. A powerful shudder racked his body. In those eyes, there was only pure madness, an unholy fire that would not be quenched. Shiki's lips wore a demonic smile, as if savoring the taste of slaughter. I'd rather not. His voice, low and soft, crawled into Akira's ears like frost. Its touch chilled Akira to the bone. Shiki approached, one deliberate step after another. Akira wanted to run, but he couldn't move. Fear had him in its grip. With a mocking sneer, he grabbed Akira by the arm and jerked him to his feet. It felt like his shoulder would be torn from its socket. Hanase. He fought back through the pain, but to no avail. Shiki watched as though enjoying his struggle, then brought his mouth close to Akira's ear. Is that a good thing? Laughter bubbled from deep in his throat. Okay. 2 questions. First one. What do you mean you'll drive the world itself mad? Do you have, like, greater ambitions than... What are you going to do with all this power? Second question. Isn't rain... Are you sure that it's going... You know, you ingested the virus and everything. But usually the others had to, like, take in a steady doses of rain. What if The virus doesn't take hold and you have to take a steady doses of it, and there's no steady doses left because you've killed the only carrier. Okay. He laughed, eyes wide like a crazed tyrant. There was no word to describe how Akira felt in that moment. Fear was woefully inadequate, yeah. Oh god. His voice was a desperate plea. Without warning, Shiki struck him hard across the face. The taste of blood flooded his mouth. This was not the Shiki he'd known. His eyes shone with a dark malevolence. What some men might have called evil. You call that treating me right? What? Red eyes stared down at him, seething with lust. So he's still obsessed with us. Well, that's good to know, I guess. And then... Ow, something slammed into his gut. His body sagged, suddenly numb. He couldn't take a single breath. His senses faded, awareness fleeing like blood from a wound. There was no one who could save him now. The hungry darkness swallowed him. Yeah, there's no one more powerful now. Actually, he could save himself, he still has the antibody blood and stuff, whatever. What happened afterward, he couldn't recall. Make him swallow your blood. He awoke to find himself lying in bed. The room was curiously noisy. Where was he? Not Toshima, that was clear. Nikorin? Thanks in part to his exhaustion, it took some time for him to grasp that he was now in Nikorin territory. Watching people run around in full battle gear, he recalled that Japan was on the verge of civil war. Was this some kind of military base? How had he ended up here? But no one bothered to answer his questions, or even to check on how he was doing. These people had more pressing concerns! What about Shiki? Suddenly remembering, Akira sat up and looked around. His body felt like lead and his head was pounding. He wouldn't be getting out of bed anytime soon. As he surveyed the room, he spotted a black-garbed figure leaning against the wall by a window. Shiki. Arms folded, he gazed steadily out the window. What Akira could see of his face appeared calm and rational, which made him wonder if the madness he'd glimpsed in the rain had been nothing but a dream. But in that case, how much of what he'd seen had been real? Could he still be dreaming, even now? What? Was there any way to tell? Fatigue gathered behind his eyes, forcing them shut. He resisted, but his thoughts soon grew foggy, then scattered, and he sank back into the abyss of sleep. What is happening, exactly? And thus Igra came to an end, together with Viskio's rule of Toshima. The machinations surrounding Project Nicole concluded as well, though not without their final price in blood. At the same time, however, a new struggle for power had begun. Oh god. He cried out as the man penetrated him. His body had learned, and now even the slightest pleasure made him burn with unquenchable lust. Enraptured by the sound of his voice, the man above him exhaled lustily, seizing his slender shoulders and began to thrust. Okay. Yeah. Moans spilled from the back of his throat, as though driven forth by the man's eager motions. The familiar heat was gathering in the depths of his body. He kept his eyes fixed on the man's face. That look of mingled shame and pleasure was what he longed to see. All men desired him. However firmly they rejected his advances, in the end they all succumbed. He loved nothing more than that environment, where they cast aside their reason and gave in to the pleasure. Even knowing where it would lead, they could not resist temptation. Wait, who? Hang on. That look of mingled shame and pleasure was what he longed to see. Wait a minute. All men desired him. However, firmly they rejected his advances. In the end, they all succumbed. He loved nothing more than that environment. Who are we talking about? Are we talking about Shiki or Akira? They knew that in the end, his master would tear them into pieces. Ah. My god, so Akira is kind of whoring himself out, and people desire him, even with the end of Shiki tearing them to pieces? What? Huh? What? I don't understand. What? Why is this happening? Huh? The war to decide the fate of Japan had slowly devolved into a sucking quagmire. Exhausted by their long struggle, both Nikorin and the CFC collapsed from within, and a new era of darkness began. Oh, both of them collapsed. Japan became a lawless wasteland where only the strongest could hope to survive. And in the ruins of Tokyo, Vischio rose once more to rule the ravenous masses. But who's leading Vischio now? Shiki? In place of Ibitro, the Shadow King, Il-Rei, came to the fore. With a nightmarish drug that could now be manufactured from his blood, Shiki made the chaos his own. He became both its origin and its administrator. In a sense, this was the opposite of what Nano had done. Where that lonely, broken man had chosen to nurse his madness in the shadows, Shiki shaped the madness, guided it toward his own purpose. Perhaps this was his way of continuing their battle, even now. Shiki's reign was harsh indeed. Those who could not survive on their own were cast aside or executed. In many cases, death was a form of mercy. In this world, where might made right, Shiki's will was absolute. Nicole's demonic blessing had granted him power that could not be challenged. Not that very many tried. In the war's aftermath, Shiki was the closest thing Japan had to a government, to a leader. Yikes! A tyrant, more like. Little games like Igra no longer existed. Instead, everyone simply bowed to Shiki's might. On the former side of Abitro's palace, Shiki erected a new castle that dwarfed its predecessor. To this stronghold, he gathered powerful warriors, those who had proven themselves in battle. The chosen were granted freedom and riches, but once per month were required to undergo a trial by combat. Any who had become complacent, whose skills failed to meet Shiki's exacting standards, were punished with summary execution. And still, there was no end to those who sought a place in Shiki's kingdom. Ugh. Where such men gathered, there was always a call for pleasure. The slave trade grew beyond anything of which Abitra had dreamed, and in its midst, Akira served as Shiki's favorite toy. Shiki's attachment to Akira was far from ordinary. Though no one could have hoped to refuse him, Shiki never took a wife or allowed anyone else to share his bed. Normally, Akira was kept in a room that no one but Shiki was permitted to enter, and Shiki invariably accompanied him when he ventured out of doors. No one who beheld him, man or woman, could help but gasp and stare. If one had to pick a single word to describe him, obscene would likely serve. Oh no, I'm so scared of what he'd done to him. That fragile, dreaming expression, those thin, sensual lips. When tossed a languid, sidelong glance, even the most stalwart heart would skip a beat. He had lost so much weight, his body was slender and looked delicate enough to break. As Shiki led him around the palace, he walked as though he were floating on clouds. At night, the soldiers posted to guard Shiki's bedroom could hear Akira's wanton cries. The sounds filled their heads with fantasies that ached and burned. Everyone longed to partake in the delights that he offered, but to indulge that urge was to sign one's own death warrant. Shiki would never suffer a trespasser to live. Indeed, countless wretches had succumbed to temptation and paid for it with their lives. Those who wished to avoid this fate strove to turn away from his eye, to convince themselves that where he stood there was only empty air. Akira knew the power he held. He knew, and he still worked his seductions. He would wait until Shiki was away, then slip softly from the bedroom and choose a target. Often this was the first guard he saw. At first his victim, gripped by terror, would struggle to refuse him, but the moment Akira's fingers brushed his skin, there resistance would end. It was almost too easy. They would spread their palms flat against his slim, smooth chest, then sigh at the ecstasy the sensation brought. But even as they devoured his body, still part of them would tremble with fear. To see this conflict, to be its source, now nothing amused him more. It had begun as a way to pass the time while Shiki was off conquering some new part of the city. At first, the affairs themselves, the secrecy, the sex, had been entertainment enough, but they soon took on the color of boredom. It didn't matter what his partners did to him. His body had grown accustomed to Shiki, and now no one else would ever be enough. Instead, he found himself more and more interested in the act of seduction itself, in corrupting hearts and minds. Besides, when Shiki found out that he'd slept with another man, he would take Akira with incredible, terrifying force. Reeking of the blood of slaughtered rebels he would refuse to let up no matter how Akira wept. That was exactly what Akira liked best, and it pleased him to know that he could make Shiki jealous. He never felt an ounce of guilt for his victims. I'm so confused. The man moaned quietly, grabbed Akira by the hips, and drove into him with several sharp thrusts. Akira clenched, drawing forth his partner's pleasure. The man groaned and came deep inside him. At the same time, he had the hand clutching his... tang of regret. Okay, as the man's fever cooled and he returned to his senses, the blood rapidly drained from his face. He knew that there was no going back. That was when Akira, still breathing heavily, favored him with a sweet smile. A smile of pity for the fate that awaited him. Oh my god, he's become... What the fuck? This is so fucked up! Just then, they heard noises from the hall outside. Akira cast a look at the antique clock standing in the center of the room. At the corner of the room. Oh god. Oh god. His murmur made the poor man turn even whiter. Akira slowly rose to his feet and left the room without another word. All he wore was a single thin sheet, and the residue of sex still clung to his skin. The guards standing in neat lines along the hallway froze, eyes glued to Akira when he drifted into sight. A trace of white fluid dripped down his inner thigh, landing on tiles polished to a mirror sheen. His master stood just outside a pair of heavy doors, receiving a report from one of his men. He looked up when he noticed Akira's presence. Everyone stopped breathing. Shiki's smoldering red gaze scanned the filth dripping down Akira's thighs. Yet Akira approached Shiki fearlessly and wound his arms around his neck. Yo! What the actual fuck is this? What? Oh my god! Oh my god! This is too much. Also, look at how fucking thin he is. Oh my god! To the astonishment of all present, Shiki welcomed Akira's soft embrace without flying into a rage, and lovingly stroked his shining hair. Yeah. He kissed Akira's hair and murmured gruffly by his ear. Yikes. Akira let out a rhapsodic sigh. Shiki's gentle tone contained a depth of cruelty that no blind rage could hope to match. He knew everything. The games Akira played, his wanton seductions. He knew it all, and yet Shiki never blamed him. They had already fallen as far as they could go. The bond between them was hopelessly twisted. No, this twisted shape was their bond's true nature. A fierce light entered Shiki's eyes as he gazed off into space. As Shiki's fury warmed his skin, Akira leaned against his shoulder and curved his lips into a smile. Yo, that ending was so fucked up! Oh my god! That ending was so fucked up! That What the fuck did I just see? What the fuck was that? Oh my god! I am so confused. I'm actually... What? What the fuck? Oh my god! I'm sorry, all I can do is scream. I'm just so many emotions. So many emotions, so many emotions. Like what was that? You know what? I've expected a lot from this game, and especially the Shiki route. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect such depravity. It's just so... Wow. Wow. Just wow, right? Wow. Oh my god. I just saw that the opening song is called Grind. Okay, let's just... You know what? As I said, I'm going to withhold judgment until I've completed all routes. So let's go for the third one. We've only had 25 minutes, so that was Shiki's third ending. Okay, the cum ending. Scheiße. Jesus. So let's just go straight into the second ending that we skipped. I was kind of thinking that if I chose to look away, it would lead us to the third ending. But yeah, it's what I would have done. I wouldn't have ended up like Akira though, but wow. So this time, let's just say that no, this is different. This was something else. They had suffered an allergic reaction to the effect of Akira's blood on the rain in their systems, whereas Shiki had essentially overdosed on rain. In which case, without a moment's hesitation, Akira reached for his left palm and dug his nails into the freshly healed wound! Oh my god, we're gonna feed him the antidote! Pain ripped through his body and fresh blood burst from the wound as though a dam had broken. He flexed his hand to encourage the blood to flow faster until his palm was coated with it. Shiki had dropped to his knees in agony. Akira ran up and tried to grab him by the shoulders. Oh god. Shiki thrust away with terrifying force. He hit the ground hard, but forced himself to get up and leap on Shiki again. Seeing Shiki up close was horrifying. His eyes were so bloodshot that even the whites seemed red, and grotesque purple veins bulged from his skin. Hanging on for dear life, Akira slid his hand across Shiki's face toward his mouth, painting his skin with blood. An instant later, Shiki's elbow caught him in the gut, blasting the air from his lungs. Oh, as he went limp, Shiki knocked him away again. He collapsed, vomiting bile into a puddle of rainwater. Did it work, though? He couldn't move, he could barely think, only the water soaking his face felt real. In these days, he thought he could someone screaming? He could hear someone screaming somewhere very far away. The scream abruptly cut off, and then all he could hear was the sound of rain hammering the pavement. Was Shiki... He felt someone move above him, and the next thing he knew, something struck the ground in front of his face. The katana? What? It was a sword, studded with drops of rain that gleamed like precious gems. He sat up, forgetting his pain. Sharp red eyes bore into him. You okay? Shiki's eyes no longer held that bestial glitter. Now they shone with intelligence, aggression, confidence. Those were the eyes of the Shiki he knew. He was alive! Emotion flooded Akira's chest. Is he okay? But at the same time, a seed of doubt took root in his subconscious. He had not yet noticed its presence. Even if he had, he would have been too preoccupied to pay his suspicions any heed. Shiki yanked his sword from the ground, turned his back on Akira, and glanced at the fallen Nano. Nano lay prone, motionless, but the wound on his neck still glistened red. Bitten to death. That is insane. Abitro, who had been paralyzed by fear until now, began to retreat. Okay, it's the same dialogue. Same dialogue. He ended the sentence with a gurgling shriek. Shiki had seized Abitro by the throat. Okay. That was kind of hot. After letting the masked man hang there for a second, Shiki dropped him to the ground. His sword swept through the rain as he let out a slow hiss. Yo! Look at this fucking face! Akira felt himself shrink back in terror. Shiki was smiling. Eyes wide and bright, it was the smile of a man who reveled in blood, hungered for it. So is this what we turned away from before? Is this what happens? That all that we didn't see when we closed our eyes before? He looked like a creature from the deepest hell. Suddenly it stank of piss. Abitro scrabbled backwards, face contorted with terror. Seeking safety, he looked over his shoulder and cried out to the executioners behind him. Serves you fucking right, you asshole. At that moment, Shiki struck. Haha. The next thing Akira heard was the clash of metal against metal. You know what? There's no love lost for me when it comes to these three. they can just die. Before Shiki's sword could claim its prey, Kiriwa had darted forward and blocked it. Mitsuko? Can't you see I loved her? What the fuck are you talking about? Who's Mitsuko? Kiriwa scowled as their weapons ground together. Huh? Who the fuck is Mitsuko, and what do you mean can't you see I loved her? Her who? What? There's only a dead Emma on the ground. What the fuck are you even talking about? Shiki let out a low laugh. Kiriwa wasn't wearing his usual lazy grin. Instead, he glared at Shiki fiercely, sharp eyes flashing with a dangerous light. Says you. You cannot ever say that ever. With a cry, Gunji dashed low, quick as a cobra, to rake at Shiki's shins with his claws. In the blink of an eye, Shiki knocked Kiriwa's pipe away and used the momentum to propel himself backward. Gunji's claws whistled as they sliced through empty air. Oh my god, can I just leave? Kiriwa closed the range with speed that belied his stature, and lashed out with his pipe. Each time it struck Shiki's sword, harsh clangs and sharp squeals rent the air. You know what? Too much information, Gunji. Shiki sidestepped one of Kiriwa's attacks, but Gunji was there to meet him. His claws struck one after the other, a rapid flurry of blows. But Shiki parried them easily and jumped away. He wasn't even breathing hard. The executioners were struggling. Even Akira could see that. Yeah. Shiki still wore that demonic smile, as though there were no greater pleasure in the world than battle. Unease coiled like a serpent in Akira's chest. He stood up for a better look and was shocked by what he saw. Without pausing to ready his sword, I love this frame though. Like, look at him. He's so pretty. If you ignore the absolute insanity that his expression is. Without pausing to ready his sword, without any hint of what he was about to do, Shiki suddenly charged at Gunji, so fast that Akira couldn't follow the motion. Apparently Gunji couldn't either. Gunji tried to dance out of the way, but Shiki had already slipped past his guard. Beneath the bangs plastered over his face, Gunji's eyes were wide open in shock. Not that too, you know, he already has too many vices, alright? Shiki's blade struck from the side, slicing raindrops as it passed. Gunji managed to block the attack with his crossed claws, but the force made him stagger. Akira couldn't begin to imagine the power it would take to stagger such a man. Okay. As Shiki moved to strike Gunji again, Kiriwa swung his pipe at Shiki's ribs. Without even glancing in Kiriwa's direction, Shiki parried, then leapt high into the air. After this, everything was a blur, far too fast for Akira to perceive. All he knew was that Shiki's sword found its targets, both of them, as though the outcome had been scripted from the start. Yeah. Two crimson arcs sprayed through the air in defiance of the rain. For a moment the world was utterly silent. Or perhaps Akira's ears had blocked out the sound. The groans and screams, the dull shriek of parting flesh. In the silence, Shiki's movements seemed as light and elegant as a dance no human could hope to match. The executioners crumpled, sending up great gouts of water. Each man's throat was marked with a straight red slash. To Akira, it seemed to happen in slow motion. But at last, time returned to normal, and the drone of the rain was louder than ever, filling the silent world. The bodies twitched, once, twice, then fell still for good. You know, you could have taken this chance to run away. Abitra had watched the whole thing with bulging eyes. Now, trembling, he started to emit a thin whine. His usual composure was nowhere to be seen. He stared up at Shiki, fear pouring off him, knees so weak that he couldn't stand. Knees weak, palms sweaty. Okay. His hoarse, desperate plea dissolved into sobbing. Shiki, bloody sword in one hand, slowly turned to look. I like this frame. He looks so terrified and it makes me happy. This game is making me go insane, man. I hope the background is fine because, like, I'm living in the center of town, and the cafe that is right outside my window has just started clearing up and all that stuff. I hope it's not too loud. Or maybe it's not picked up at all. I don't know. Anyway. The executioner's blood and nanos had lent a peculiar gleam to his black coat, but now the rain was beginning to rinse it away. Yeah, you too. A cold smile played around his lip. What the fuck did I just say? Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Why is your voice so high? But also, like, what the fuck did I just say? A cold smile played about his mouth. What? Oh my god, Jesus. He wailed, hands slipping on the wet asphalt as he sought in vain to escape. Shiki stood in front of him, blocking his way in the darkness. His sword shone with an eerie light as though he had hungered for blood. Oh my god, that was very ugly. Couldn't even finish his scream. Partway through, his voice caught in his throat. The last sound he made was that of a strangled chicken. A single relentless stroke of the blade had separated Abitro's head from his body. Blood rose from the stump like a geyser, and then the corpse, suit-stained red, toppled slowly to the ground. As the nightmarish scene... Oh my god, look at him, he's so pretty. Like, what the fuck? As the nightmarish scene drew to a close, Shiki gave his sword a hard shake, then turned once again to face Nano's body. Okay. I mean, I kind of like the middle of what you said. He raised one arm and clenched his fist as though to seize the world itself. Certainty took root in Akira's heart. This was not the Shiki he knew. Shiki turned to look at Akira. Fierce scarlet eyes pierced his soul. He couldn't breathe. All he saw there was madness. Shiki grabbed his arm and dragged him along. He couldn't even raise his voice in protest. His body felt weak, his knees buckled, and he struggled to keep his footing. What do you mean, rightful place? Rightful place at the top of humanity? Like, are you aiming to become a true king? Like, what? Shiki stared off into space, lips curled in a knife-edged smile. It was the smile of a conqueror. Shiki pulled Akira close and looked into his face. He could feel the taller man's breath on his skin. Raw panic seized his heart, as if Shiki had ripped it from his chest and was gazing upon it with hungry eyes. Glad to see your obsession has not waned. A pang! His piercing throbbed. The fucking piercing! His voice was a command that could not be denied. Those red eyes grew until they filled Akira's world. He imagined Shiki reaching directly into his skull, stirring his soft, malleable brain tissue and reshaping it. Ew, that is a very visceral thought. The image evoked a sweet temptation, and his body quivered with the need to give in. Okay. Not like we have any choice. He no longer cared what lay ahead. He need only follow, he need only obey. Therein lay warmth, release, and ecstasy. Perhaps he too had gone mad. Yeah, you know what? It wouldn't be surprising if you'd gone mad too. Afterwards, Shiki led him to Nikorin. He barely recalled how they managed to leave Toshima. His mind was numb, as if in the throes of fever. The only impression left in his memory was a sense that they had spent a long time in darkness. A shadowed alley, a long, lightless passage, in the distance, explosions that rocked the ground. He remembered thinking vaguely to himself that war must have broken out. He had no idea how far they'd walked, but his legs felt like blocks of wood by the time they again saw light. The next thing he knew, they emerged into a Nikorin army base. The CFC's offensive had begun and the base was in chaos. Even so, the garrison commander saw to it that Akira and Shiki were taken safely into custody. Why? No one had time to ask many questions about who they were or where they'd come from. The one issue that did arise, Akira's murder charge back home, was cleared when Emma's involvement came to light. So it's very similar to dialogue. Soon Nikorin emerged victorious, and Japan took its first steps towards a new future. So this is different from the third ending, because in the third ending, no one won, right? And it became a lawless wasteland. No one could have known that the man on Akira's side, the man with the eyes that seemed to smolder, had been waiting patiently for his chance to come. The first step toward a new future also marked the beginning of a brand new struggle. Oh, what is he gonna do? A long black corridor stretched into darkness. White lights shone at regular intervals along the ceiling, but each refused to illuminate more than its own limited circle of territory. That's how lights work. Doors like black ghosts lined the walls to either side, sentinels preventing passers-by from catching any glimpse of what lay inside. The air was sharp and very clear, as taut as a tight-pulled thread, but far from being clean or invigorating, it felt instead like the quiet before a storm, a creeping apprehension. Piteous pleas shredded that heavy air. A soldier was dragging a man in a dirty grey uniform down the corridor, holding him securely by both arms. His wails, desperate wordless sounds, bounced powerless off the implacable walls. He dropped to his knees, fighting for every inch, but the soldier pulled him along unheeding, as indifferent as a machine. The soldier's back was ramrod straight, his stride was swift and certain. He wore his cap pulled low, hiding his eyes, but there could be little doubt that his expression was one of perfect calm. At the end of the hallway stood a pair of black doors. Delicately edged and engraved down to their handles, the doors gave off a cold, imposing aura that dominated the corridor. As they drew closer, the man's pleas gave way to weeping, and at last the screams of utter despair. But the soldier's grip remained firm as the door swung slowly inward. What is happening right now? What? Shiki looked up from his paperwork, annoyance clear on his face. Huh? What? Also, this voice. Is that Akira's voice? With a disdainful mutter, he returned his gaze to the documents on his desk. After delivering the prisoner, the soldier had come to deliver his report. This office lay at the opposite end of the U-shaped corridor that took up this floor. Although the color scheme was entirely black, the room was spacious with a high ceiling, and this kept it from feeling oppressive. A long, narrow, garnet red carpet led from the doorway to the back of the room. The wall on the right side had a large window that admitted a generous helping of afternoon light, whereas the wall on the left was lined with massive bookshelves. In the center was a broad desk and a black leather chair. That was where Shiki sat. He wore the same black uniform as the soldier, but the emblem of his status glittered on his breast. Chest, you mean? What the fuck is happening? Also, why is he looking like Hitler? Turning his chair to the side, Shiki crossed his legs and leaned back to gaze at his obedient lieutenant, who stood poised a few steps behind him. That Shiki's lips twisted into a smile. His man's calm recitation had pleased him. Okay. Okay. 3 years had passed since the war ended. The hostilities had lasted barely a year. Thanks to Nikorin's army of super soldiers had crushed the CFC in a matter of months. It was Shiki who had given them the virus, not only the original strain, which his blood now carried, but also Akira's antigen. Together, the data these samples provided allowed Nikoran scientists to perfect the formula. Unlike Nano, who had closed his heart, Shiki took an active role in the research. He soon became the project's leader, and from there climbed the ranks with startling speed, until finally taking command of an elite unit, Invincible Warrior strengthened by Nicole. The lone wolf had gained a pack. The same power that had driven Nano into loneliness and despair that countless others had destroyed themselves to obtain, Shiki now unleashed upon the world. Perhaps this was Shiki's way of continuing the fight against his nemesis, even now. No one could resist the force of his charisma. His men worshipped him as a god, for he was the source of their superhuman strength. But what Shiki desired was not, of course, rank or comrades to call his own. All of that had been little more than groundwork, paving the way toward his ultimate goal. What is his ultimate goal? To become god? Like what? Shortly after the war ended, as the new government struggled to repair the fractured nation, Shiki struck from the shadows, seizing control. His coup was meticulously planned and flawlessly executed. The leaders of Nikoran were the first to go, followed by their counterparts from the former CFC. Shiki had power, vision, and cruelty. Nothing could hope to stand in his way. Now the man who had once lived in the shadows was the absolute ruler of a unified Japan. Whoa! Now the heart of Japan was Tokyo, Toshima. All trace of Vizcyo and Igra had vanished. The second war in less than a decade had reduced Toshima to rubble, and so Shiki's first order of business was to revitalize the city. The black fortress he constructed on the former site of Abitro's palace dwarfed its predecessor. From his people, Shiki demanded strength, declaring that the weak had no right to live. In this, his ideals resembled the CFC's, but with even less room for compromise. Oh my god, that is horrible to say. Those with strength were welcomed into his elite fighting corps, while those who lacked it were treated like slaves. Shiki considered these slaves worthless and would sentence them to death for the slightest resistance. The men Shiki chose to join his forces believed themselves a superior race. There was no limit to the cruelty with which they abused the lower classes. Oh my god. They were objects of profound fear and awe, and Akira was their leader? Shiki had always preferred to act alone. Akira was the only other person permitted to entrance to his private study. This made conveying Shiki's orders his responsibility. I've changed! The corners of Shiki's mouth curled, and he stretched a hand toward Akira's face. Glad I could please you, I guess. What the fuck? Oh my god. Oh my god. Let me quickly make a voice check. So is he the one that also did this thing? Yeah. So it's what Akira said. So I was right, this is Akira's voice, so it is Akira. Wonderful. That's exactly what we like to see. What the fuck is this ending? I hate it. It's worse than the third one, actually. This is my least favorite. Ever since the day Akira had decided to follow him, he remained Shiki's obedient servant. Shiki's rule was the focus of much condemnation, both from within Japan's borders and without, but in the end, no one could deny his power. That, in Akira's opinion, was what made Shiki a true sovereign. Shiki had absolute strength and unwavering conviction, and was feared by all who heard his name. He was perfect, sublime, beautiful, and heroic. What? How? What? Heroic? Akira's faith in Shiki, his infinite loyalty, was the core of who he had become. Shiki's voice was teasing. He chuckled in the back of his throat. So Akira's still kind of like this fucking sex symbol. What? Adorable. Okay. He briefly stroked Akira's cheek, then reached for the katana propped against his desk. Oh my god. Oh my god. His white-gloved hands caressed the hilt of his sword. Shiki's hunger for power was endless. It was said that excessive ambition, like pride, inevitably leads men to their downfall. Let's hope it leads to his downfall without nuking the entire world around him. But Akira had a feeling that Shiki might prove the exception. Oh god. No, he was certain of it. Oh yikes. The entire world would kneel before him. He raised his chin. I think this is already more than enough, don't you think? His gaze pierced Akira's skin, hot enough to burn his soul to ash. Well, I guess that is how it's going to be, huh? His arm extended, he closed his fist. For a moment, Akira had the illusion that his heart lay clenched in Shiki's fingers. The image made him shiver with joy. Yikes. He would make this vow as many times as required. Whenever Shiki asked, he would offer up his life. Thus replied the conqueror, his smile radiant. Yep, this is by far my least favorite ending. I did not enjoy that ending at all. No, thank you. No, thank you. So, to recap, there's 3 Shiki endings, right? And the first one ends with Shiki being catatonic and Akira becoming Shiki, right? Kind of like, I don't know, imitating him, so to speak, while also taking care of a catatonic Shiki. The second ending was this, which was just insane. Just like taking over unified Japan. Kind of like what happened after... fuck. I always forget his name! I want to say Tokugawa, but that's not who it was. Fuck. Hideyoshi? Was it Hideyoshi? The one that took the cake which the other 2 baked or whatever? I'll blend it in, whatever. It's just kind of, it reminds me of the history of Japan is what I'm trying to say here. So, this is a really, really bleak ending because it's like elites open to like a militaristic world, which is just horrifying. Like, honestly, the worst possible world to live in, right? Like, one of the worst, right? And he's just like, he's on his way to like take the entire world, not just Japan, like, and he's unstoppable at this point. And he's also raising super soldiers to stand with him. Akira is still a sex symbol as he is in the third ending, but he's like even less of a person in this ending. So weirdly enough, he's even less of his own person than he is in the third ending. And the third ending is just a ruined Japan with a tyrant standing atop a ruined country, with Akira just absolutely losing his mind. But at least it's like kind of contained in that ending, right? So basically what I'm trying to say is the first ending was probably the best because Shiki was, you know, incapacitated. But the other 2 endings where Shiki actually still had control over his actions were horrifying. Like, actually horrifying for everyone around him. He's like a nuke. Devastating to all those around him. So, yeah. It was very interesting. It was very, very interesting. And I have to say, personally, the third ending was my favorite. But also, what an absolute shitfest the Shiki roots were, right? Like, wow. What an absolute disaster of a character. I love him. I really do. It was very interesting. I don't know what I expected exactly, but it wasn't this. So, thank you so much for this, I guess. Azu and Christopher de Bono, Phil Long, whatever. All you people translating this for us non-Japanese people to comprehend, because wow, what a game. I'm so confused still by what I've just played and seen. Let me know what you think about this. This brought up very interesting points of like, I don't really have the words. Oh my god, I feel really stupid right now that I can't really talk about what I'm trying to say. It's just, it brings up a lot of very interesting points about social structure and all that. Leading a country and what it kind of does, because Shiki is like starting out as a shadow king, kind of taking up power more and more. It's very interesting. Whatever. Interesting ends. Shiki ending, huh? Also, why didn't I get the achievement? Hang on. I didn't get the achievement for Shiki End 2. Was this not Shiki End 2? So there's Keisuke End, a Bicho End, Keisuke Bad End number 1, Keisuke Bad Hand number 2, Motomi End, Shiki End 2. Ah, no. It's just... Okay, I did get the achievement. It was just delayed. Okay. So we got all Shiki endings. Rin End, Gunji, and Kiriwa. So we still need Keisuke 1, 2, 3 Keisuke endings, 1 Abicho, 1 Motomi, and then there's 2 hidden achievements. Don't know what that means, but we'll do all of it. I hope you enjoyed. Definitely let me know whatever small thoughts you had about this ending, because I'm really, really curious to know. Let me know who your favorite character is, because mine is very obvious, I think, at this point. Hopefully I'll see you in the next episode. Make yourself something nice, like a nice ginger tea, maybe with a little bit of honey, because honestly we all need some healing after this absolute shitfest of a character round. Yeah, I wish you the best. Take care of yourselves, please take care of yourselves, and hopefully I'll see you again. Until then, bye bye.